Hi, this is Kyle again. In another recent video, we talked about text editors and IDEs and what they are. In this video, we're going to be installing Visual Studio Code, or VS Code, as an IDE. This means not only just installing the program, but also the basic customizations that will make it able to work with Python code. As you might expect, we'll be starting with a web browser. However, as with Atom, getting Visual Studio Code to work with Python does require that Python is already properly installed, and it would be a good idea to have restarted your computer since you installed Python before you begin. Now we begin. We navigate to code.visualstudio.com, and this will take you directly to the spot where you can download it. If you were to search for Visual Studio Code, you should find it's one of the top matches. However, as a word of caution, if you were to search for just Visual Studio, your matches will probably look a little different and they might not be the product you want. Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code are different products, and we want to make sure we end up at code.visualstudio.com. Then we're going to click on this download button. Should detect your operating system. We download the newest stable build, and we'll just let the download happen. You can read through this page if you want to pass the time. Now that the download is completed, we have to run it. You can run it right from the browser if your browser allows that, or you might need to find the file and then run it on your computer. We do have to accept their licensing agreement. Go ahead and read the details if you're that kind of person. I've installed this a number of times already. I'm going to go with mostly default install settings. Just in case any future extensibility is going to make use of it, I'm going to just make sure that this add to path option is checked. And now we're letting the installer complete. We'll go ahead and run it. Here is our new instance of Visual Studio Code. There are a couple of steps we need to take in order to get Python working here. To ensure that Python is available to Visual Studio Code, we need to install what's called an extension. And so to access that, you go to File, Preferences, and Extensions. When you open this up, you should be able to browse the extensions that are available to be installed. And you can just type in here, Python. You should see a match at the top that says Python that has 23 million downloads. And so, yes, this is the legitimate Python installation. And so we'll click Install and install the Python extension for Visual Studio Code, which will allow Visual Studio Code to run Python code. Now that that's ready, we can do Python. So let's go New File, and we'll type in here, print hello world, just like we've done a bunch of times already. And I'll save this as a Python file. I'll go File, Save As, and I'll select as my file type Python, which should be a little down here. It's mostly alphabetical. Go Python, and I will call this, maybe I'll call this Hello World. Well, I could call it Hello World.py. You can see I already have one. It's the one we've been working on, but I'll overwrite it. So I'll go Save and replace the file. There we go. What you're going to notice is once I've saved that file, the colors in the editor changed because they changed to provide you some context about the code. And so now we've got print hello world, and we should be able to run it. Running code in Visual Studio Code is done by clicking on Run and then Start Debugging. You can also do it with just a quick F5, which is pretty standard actually. We have to select that we're running the Python file as a Python file, and then this should run. And you're going to see it starting to run down in the bottom. And you can see the hello world, that's the program's output. So we know this is actually working properly. If you have had a problem at this point, it's probably the exact same kind of problem I ran into when I was recording the video about Atom. And that is the Python install didn't include a path environment variable for Python. And so just make sure that when you install Python, that box is checked. And if you are having problems getting Visual Studio Code to recognize Python code after following the steps in this video, you may need to uninstall and reinstall Python itself. But now we have Visual Studio Code, and with basic configuration, it is running Python code. Like with Atom, there are tons of extra extensions we could be discussing and using, and maybe some of them will come up as recommendations later, but this is really what you need to get started writing Python code using Visual Studio Code. We're ready. So in this video, we went through the process of installing Visual Studio Code, getting it to work with Python, and then proving that it worked with the Hello World program. In the next video, we will be talking about actual coding practices, starting with a demo that's going to emphasize why we document our code. Thanks.